Hello everyone, my name is Esther Alicia and welcome to a new learning experience by the good learners. The topic for today's lecture is India, the Events After 1960. It's a class 9th, chapter 2nd of the History Maharashtra State Board book. So without any further ado, let's begin with the lecture. As we know that India got independent in the year 1947 and it also marks the end of colonial rule in India. The constitution was however adopted by the Constituent Assembly in the year 1949 and it officially came into force on January 26, 1950. Thus, India became a sovereign democratic republic after its constitution came into effect. But in the initial period, the post-independence period, there were issues that India had to deal with. These were economic, political and social issues. In order to grow properly, all these social, political, economic problems had to be dealt with first. Independent India was standing at the threshold of a new period and the mission was to create a strong and powerful nation. So there were various measures that were taken by the government to resolve all these issues. To resolve the economic issues, the first aim was to create an economy that is powerful. The first aim was to remove poverty, as the nation of India was economically very weak. The Britishers had almost used the assets of the country, and in the post-independence period, during the partition, the wealth of the country was divided between India and Pakistan. So India was left with a few assets, a few amount to support itself. So another important thing that happened was that planning commission was established, in which planning was done on the basis of social justice. Secondly, industries were established to generate more and more employment opportunities in the country. For the political issue, to ensure political stability, successful conduct of elections were taking place in the entire country, which had in turn increased people's faith in these new democratic traditions. Thirdly, for resolving the social issues, various social reforms, policies and programs were introduced that will help to empower the weaker sections of the society. Now we'll start with the significant events of the 1960s. What was the political situation like in India around that time? The first important event politically was the freedom of regions, when Goa, Daman and Diu freed from Portuguese rule. They became a part of India from 1961. The second important event was the War of 1962. This took place between India and China, and the tensions between these two countries existed since 1950 and which ultimately led to the War of 1962. It occurred at the shared northern border of India and China defeated India in this war. Now we're going to be talking about the first Prime Minister of independent India, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru. He contributed majorly towards the social and economic development of India. He implemented socialist economic reforms and committed India to a policy of industrialization. He reorganized the states of India on linguistic lines. New agricultural policies were introduced. He introduced social policies which included reforms in education, reforms for empowering the women, which included increased legal rights for them. There were revised rules in the Hindu Marriage Act, etc. And Nehru also implemented defense and nuclear policies. He sought foreign allies for India, making it globally strong. But he ultimately died in the year 1964 of a heart attack. The next Prime Minister was Mr. Lal Bahadur Shastri, and under his prime ministership, India went to war with Pakistan on the Kashmir issue in the year 1965. Even the Soviet Union tried to mediate between India and Pakistan, but it wasn't very useful. He gave the slogan Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, and thus he highlighted the importance of Indian soldiers and Indian farmers. Why Indian soldiers? Because Indian soldiers keep us protected. They are our protectors, and because of them we sleep peacefully at night. And Indian farmers give the country food. They are a provider of food. Thus, we should be grateful and they should be thanked for that. He gave the important slogan Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, and he ultimately died at Tashkent in 1966. Indira Gandhi, she was the next Prime Minister who was appointed. She became Prime Minister in the year 1966 after Lal Bahadur Shastri's death, and she succeeded Lal Bahadur Shastri. As we all know, she was Jawaharlal Nehru's daughter. She was the first female Prime Minister of India and in fact the only female Prime Minister of India to date. She went to war with Pakistan in support of the independence movement in East Pakistan, and India emerged victorious in that war with Pakistan. This ultimately led to the creation of the country Bangladesh. So all of these independence movements in Bangladesh affected India as millions of refugees came to India. The independence movement in Bangladesh was led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his organization Mukti Bahini. We're going to be talking about the year 1970s. In the year 1971, India and Pakistan went to war, which led to the creation of independent country Bangladesh. A fun fact about this is that this Indo-Pakistani War is one of the shortest wars in history, lasting for just 13 days. In the year 1974, India successfully conducted underground testing of atomic device at Pokhran in Rajasthan. India was getting atomically strong, so it was a great achievement for the country. In the year 1975, people of Sikkim voted for joining Indian Republic and thus became a state in Indian Federation. In the year 1974, it's an important year. Allahabad High Court gave verdict to Indira Gandhi, who was then Prime Minister at the time, stating that she misused government machinery during her election campaign. This led to nationwide strikes and protest. The political situation was so worse, and it got more worse as a movement was led by Mr. Jayaprakash Narayan. He publicly criticized the central government, and people were raising their consciousness and voices against the corruption of the government, and the law and order situation got totally worse. There were constant clashes between students and the police, which led to the government's declaration of the state of emergency in the year 1975. The emergency lasted for 2 years, and it was basically a response of the JP movement, the Jayaprakash Narayan movement. So in the state of emergency, the fundamental rights of Indian citizens were suspended, but a positive was that Indian administration got disciplined. The negatives of the emergency was that human rights were still restricted. For 2 years, human rights were restricted, so that's a great negative. But during the backdrop of the emergency, many opposition parties were forming, and they formed a party called the Janata Party. General elections took place in the entire country right after the emergency, and the Congress lost the elections with a majority of the votes. The Janata Party came into power and appointed a first non-Congress Prime Minister named Morarji Desai. Under his lead, this Janata Party government couldn't last long because of internal differences. Whenever there is a coalition party, there mostly appears some differences which in turn make the government weak. He ultimately resigned in the year 1979. He was succeeded by Charan Singh, who was appointed as the Prime Minister in the year 1979. He belonged to the Janata Party, and his government was sadly short-termed. He was voted out 6 months later by Indira Gandhi. We're going to be talking about the year 1980s now. The Punjab Sikhs had started to demand an independent state called Khalistan. They started a movement which became violent and destructive. Pakistan also lent its support to this movement. In the year 1984, Indian Army was sent inside the Golden Temple, Amritsar, to evict the terrorists who had allegedly taken shelter there. In the year 1984, however, Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her own Sikh bodyguard in her personal security. In the year 1979, ULFA, United Liberation Front of Assam, was founded. It's an important point. So that's it for today's lecture. We hope you liked it. If you did, then please like, share and subscribe to our channel. You can even reach out to us through our social media. Also, if you have any queries, you can click on the Google form link in the description box and we will be happy to talk to you. Thank you.